really amazing to be back. I love coming here, I love working with the orchestra, and it's really a privilege to work on this program as well with this wonderful orchestra. Every time, I always look forward to coming here, and we just had a great first rehearsal, so it's wonderful. My life when I'm not doing the music, it's a bit sad. There's not that much of it, because normally I am doing something with music. If I'm at home, I'm learning scores, because I'm, at the moment, especially in a very busy period. So there's lots to learn and lots to work on, and I love listening to music, all kinds of music. If I'm at home, I love spending time with my cats and my husband. Oh, I should say the other way around. No. My husband and my cats. It's very, very cozy in Berlin, where I live at the moment. It's pretty cold, so it's very nice to cuddle up with the cats. And my husband loves cooking, so that's an unfortunate way that we like to spend the time. I love like to read. I like reading, but I don't actually get the chance to read very many books at the moment. And of course, I love going out in Berlin, meeting friends. But I have to say, at the moment, a lot of my life is music, which is actually what I love. Yeah, I love traveling, and I love seeing and trying to get into the culture of a place. Even if I'm only there for 3 or 4 days, it's always fascinating. And every orchestra is different, but every orchestra is also the same. It's really fascinating. It has the same kind of people, some of the same attitudes, but some are different. The way that each the orchestral musicians in every country actually behave or are with a conductor is very different. Some are more formal and some are less formal. And it's always interesting to find the best way that you can actually communicate or work with or even be with the orchestral musicians. And I love coming here, as I said already, because I know everyone, and it's really nice, and it's very, very relaxed. I don't feel that I feel that I can really be myself and say what I want to say and give my ideas of the music. Whereas when you go to an orchestra for the first time, sometimes you have to spend a few minutes just finding the way and judging the atmosphere. But that makes it very, very interesting as well, the whole psychology of an orchestra, how to rehearse, if an orchestra can take it, going into very small details which sometimes can be very boring, but it's a work that has to be done. And apart from, and of course outside of the orchestras, the actual culture of the place that you go to, the food and the drink and the customs, it's fascinating, you know, every week being in a different place, it never gets boring. Yeah, this program is absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy to be doing all of these pieces. Obviously, it's a French program, all French music. Two of the most important composers from France, Debussy and Ravel. We decided to take one very well-known piece from each of them and one not so well-known piece from each of them. So the Debussy, the well-known piece, is the Preludio, Sesto Fauno, and the less well-known piece is Je, which is a ballet, which was a ballet, it's a ballet score for a ballet, and it's really not performed very often at all, but I think it's an absolutely incredible piece. It's wonderful, it's so beautiful, it's very, very complicated, it's very, very delicate, you really have to be careful with how you approach it, but it's a very, very special piece. And the Ravel, of course, the most well-known piece by Ravel is Bolero, which we're doing at the end of the concert, which is just the most incredible piece. And the less well-known piece is Rhapsody Espagnole, but also a very rhythmical, very, very exciting piece. And the piece in the middle of those, or in the middle of the first half, is the Petite Suite by Germaine Taillefer, which I didn't know until I learned it for this program. Always very important to find something that's also not quite so well known and present it to the public. It's a very short piece, and it's a very different style of writing. But I think it fits in because it's such a contrast with the other pieces, that the other pieces have similarities. It's such a contrast that it makes the program even more, gives it more dimension. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's not, Germaine Taillefer is really not a very well known composer. As you said, she was the only female member of the Varèse. And the piece that we're actually playing, this Petite Suite, it's a very French way of composing. It's almost neo-classical or even neo-Renaissance at times. It has, it's very, very rhythmical. It has very, very strong melodies, dance-like elements, but it still has some of the harmonies that we feel, that we see here that are typically French. It's quite a short piece, it's really full of energy, it's very lively, and it's actually a joy to work on it and to perform it, because it is quite different to the other pieces on the programme. It makes us, somehow it's a little bit more direct than some of the other pieces. Yeah, exactly. And the first piece, the Prelude, was the first piece that Debussy, that actually made Debussy well-known, famous. It is an absolutely incredible piece. I just said, it's like a jewel. It's just like a tiny little jewel. Every note is perfect, and it's a responsibility as well to be entrusted with a jewel like this and to play it in the concert. We have fantastic woodwind soloists. It's a huge part for the flute, and it's absolutely fantastic. But all of the orchestra playing the solos absolutely beautifully. Debussy found a new style of composition, and it was his first piece where everyone actually became aware of this style. And Je was only less than 20 years later, but it was performed at Premiere just 2 weeks before the Rite of Spring. It is a very nebulous piece. It's very hard to get a hold on. There aren't so many themes and rhythms. It's always changing, it's always shifting, which is what it's actually trying to do. But I think it's very difficult when you hear it for the first time to actually get a hold of it, find out what is actually going on in your mind, which I think was why it was not a great success in the first performance, and why it's also seldom performed. It's quite complicated, I have to say. It's not easy, but for me, I mean, Debussy is one of the absolute greatest composers, and really he found a way out of the 19th century, and led the way really into a whole another world of composing. He didn't like the term impressionist, but there is a lot of much less direct composing if you compare it to a German, what was going on in Central Europe at the time. But it's interesting because you do hear even what was going on in the Après-midi d'Enfant, in the Prelude. You still hear a lot of that in Je, in the second piece. There are lots of techniques that he uses, with lots of the way the strings are treated, the solo woodwind instruments. But he's just taken it so far that it's actually quite difficult to understand what's going on at the very first time you hear it. You just have to sit back and enjoy it because it is absolutely beautiful. It's an amazing piece. Well, Ravel was, of course, a French composer, but his mother was Spanish and his father was Swiss. So he was not quite as French as some French people. And he was from the very south of France. So there's a lot of Spanish influence in his music anyway. And even De Falla said that it actually was authentically Spanish. Both of these pieces, well, actually, the Rhapsody Espagnole, first of all, because the Bolero just has one idea, which takes until the end of time. But the Rhapsody Espagnole uses Spanish elements, but also Ravel created his own style with these elements. It's not really direct quotations. I mean, you have things like castanets, which makes it sound very Spanish, and tambourines, and lots of rhythms, which are Spanish, but still the harmony is very much French, and Ravel, and a lot of the orchestration. The orchestration is incredible. When I was learning it and just looking at how he uses the orchestra, the combinations of instruments that he finds with it, you know, you think, what instrument is playing that? And it might be 4 double basses playing very high up, or you know, something with 3 muted trumpets and a harp, or something like that, which creates totally new sounds. And there's always a different texture. And in the Bolero, that's a piece like no other, of course. Even if people don't quite know what to expect, they'll know it when they hear it. I think most people have really heard this insistent rhythm which goes on for 15 minutes through the whole piece and starts very, very quietly, builds up to this incredible climax. It's really an unbelievable energy that is released by this piece. It probably, I don't know, Ravel said, you know, it was his best or most famous piece, but there was no music in it. That was his famous quotation. And it is, in one way, extremely simple. He also shows this genius of orchestration by combining different instruments. There are 2 melodies which alternate, and he orchestrates them differently every time. But it became such a huge. I mean, I think Ravel was surprised by how much of a success it became right at the beginning. It was an immediate success. And maybe it did some damage, I don't know. I think if you know Bolero, you want to hear other pieces by Ravel. And there are elements of Bolero, this very rhythmical Spanish energy in all his music. So actually, Bolero is a very good way into listening to other pieces by Ravel. So in that way, I think it did him a lot of good.
Is it like an introduction to Ravel, you consider?
In one way. They're in the elements of Bolero, you can hear them certainly in the last movement of Rhapsody Espagnole, and the way he treats the orchestra, the way he uses the orchestra in Bolero, you can hear it in other pieces, and even much more in a much more complicated way.
¿Y te veremos bailar en el escenario?
Bailar?
Yeah, shall you dance on stage when you conduct?
Yeah, of course. at least in my head.
Okay. Thank you so much. Always is a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me.
Thank you.